2 Samuel chapter 19. This is one of the most kind of tragic verses, these last few verses we've had. Remember, David has sent out his men with one basic instruction. Don't kill Absalom. That was pretty much all he cared about. Don't kill Absalom. 2 Samuel chapter 19. And you have this horrific scene where he finds out at the end of the last chapter that Absalom is dead. And he says, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I could have died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son. That's tragic enough. It's bad enough to lose family or whatever. But can you imagine the raw emotion that David had when Absalom dies? They haven't been very good together. They haven't had a good relationship. He hasn't seen him. Remember when he comes home even, he refuses to see him. There's that mental anguish. He knows for a fact that part of the reason, or the main reason that Absalom is dead is him, his sin. I mean, this is horrific. If you ever want to, how do I say this? If you ever want to know how bad sin is, this is a picture of it, right? The cost of sin, the consequences of sin. It's also, and I'm sure everybody's kind of had that happen. When someone passes away, sometimes we have regrets, right? We should have spoken more. I should have visited more. That thing I was upset about doesn't seem so important anymore. And it really gives you this idea of like keeping relationship. I mean, this is relationships with people. His own son is dead, and you can't even describe what it's like. I mean, this is horrific. My son. He knows he's killed him, basically. He knows he hasn't been a great father in many ways. There's so much emotional and mental, and if David had a low point in his life, this is one of them. He had several low points, but this has got to be horrific. And sometimes, it's been a reminder. Remember when a few weeks ago, months ago now maybe, we kept saying that David just had to stop. Remember that? Like, just stop. Like, when you see Bathsheba, that's it. Just stop. Don't go any further. He inquires who she is. Stop. He brings her over. Stop. He sleeps with her. Just stop. He kills. You're right. I mean, it's just, and you know what? All of that, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it now is coming out. And can you imagine? My son, Absalom. And really, when you go back to it, it started way before this. Whenever you get humans involved, even as good a person as David, as great a person in many ways David is, you know how he compares to God? Like, this is essentially the problem, is that they rejected God and wanted a king. And that's where all this started. When they decided that Saul would be better than God, and that was not a good move. And whatever king you want to make it, David is vastly regarded as the greatest king, and obviously he has issues. But it all starts because they wanted to be like everybody else. They didn't really want to trust God and honor God. And God from the beginning, remember, ages and ages ago when we started this, remember, he said, you don't want a king, and I'll tell you why you don't want a king, because if you have a king, this. And it's so amazing how Israel and David now is in this torture. I mean, we talk about the inner man a lot, right? His inner man is nowhere near being filled at this, filled at this moment. Like, it's, if you want to see about, like, nurturing relationships and staying out of trouble and staying out of sin, you can't get much lower than this. Plus, on top of that, he's got the just natural grief of losing a kid. It's horrific. Chapter 19, verse 1. Word soon reached Joab that the king was weeping and mourning for Absalom. Joab's not exactly a very compassionate person. He's David's sister's son. As the troops heard of the king's deep grief for his son, listen to this, the joy of that day's victory was turned into deep sadness. They've just won this victory. Absalom has come to try and take the throne. Last week we learned that the forest, like nature, took care of most of them. God took through nature most of them rather than even them having to. God was all over this because, again, coming after David is coming after God. You're not going to win that fight. And Joab has made sure that Absalom is dead. The one rule was, don't let him die. Joab hasn't just let Absalom die. He's dug him in the, he's hit him in the heart 3 times. So there's meant to be this sense of victory and awe, but they're coming back to see David, and they can't celebrate. They can't celebrate because the king is in a mess, and he's beside himself. But really, they don't want to celebrate because they fear what? What was, again, their one rule of battle was, don't kill Absalom. They came home, and they've killed Absalom. Yeah, so now they're in this weird spot. But do you see the problem? And it's a problem lots of times. We worry about, we honor, we fear the wrong people and the wrong things. The reason Israel got in this spot is because they didn't fear the Lord. They chose another king. They chose something they could see. The Lord said to Samuel a long time ago, don't worry about that. They've rejected me, not you. Samuel's like, this is a horrific idea. He knew from the get-go this was a terrible idea. But do you see, they didn't fear the Lord. And so he gave them Saul. Now you're under Saul. He went crazy. And David is now this king who is wrecked. And do you see, they're scared of David. You know why they're scared of David sometimes? Do you know why they're scared of Saul? Do you know why we're scared of other people sometimes? Because we're nuts. Because none of us can, we don't know what other people are going to do. When God is in control, you don't have to worry about any of that. When David's in control, even David, you've got issues. And they swapped God for all of these other kings. And they're worried about David, but really they should have been worried about the Lord. And they know this isn't going to go well. So they come back, and the joy of that day's victory was turned into deep sadness. They were mourning with David, but the whole thing's a mess, right? I mean, Absalom has tried, and lots of these people, lots of the people, not the troops that heard this and the troops that won the day, but lots of Israel is in trouble because they went with the wrong guy. They backed Absalom, and now Absalom's dead, and now what do you do? So look at what it says. The troops, these people that fought for David, heard of the king's deep grief for his son. The joy of that day's victory was turned into deep sadness. There's all kinds of emotion. They crept back into the city as though they were ashamed and had been beaten in battle. If you had seen them, it would look like they lost. Because they let Absalom die. They knew David was weeping. It's all a mess. I mean, who's winning in this? Who has the joy of the Lord at this point? None of them. Look what happens. The king covered his face with his hands, and he kept on what? He kept on weeping. He just kept on weeping. My son Absalom, oh Absalom, my son, my son. You ever wish you could get moments back? David has a lot of regrets, a lot of my son has died. And he realized, Nathan has told him the sword will never leave your family because of you. He knows intrinsically he's linked to that death. Joab is very compassionate. Joab's a loose cannon. Joab's the kind of guy that's fine if he's on your side, but if he turns against you, you ever had a loose cannon friend? He's your loose cannon friend. He'll get you in a fight before you know it. Joab went to the king's room and said to him, we saved your life today. See, Joab is bold. He's obnoxious. We've said it 10 times already. You had one rule. Imagine if you're the king and you tell him, don't kill my son, and he's a major part of it. Now David is going to have even more animosity towards Joab. Joab comes in, he's like, hey, we saved your life. Joab sees it like, we killed Absalom, but we saved your life. The problem with it, but therein lies the problem. God had ordained that David was never going to die. David was going to be king. There was no qualms about David dying because he was God's man. He was God's king. Joab thinks, and this is the problem we get into, to make things right, who does Joab think has to act? When life has to go the right way, who does he depend on to make it right? Yeah, himself. You ever tried that? That's not a good idea. No one else will do it. No one else will stand. I'll fix this. Joab takes care of it. The problem is, in war, when you go against the general's rule, that's probably a bad idea. Joab thinks he should get a high five. He's killed his son. Now, granted, they weren't on great terms. Look at what he says. We saved your life. Well, first of all, that's not really true either. You know who saved David's life all these years? God did. And the lives of your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your concubines. In other words, Joab's trying to play the conquering hero. Joab says, we just saved you and all your people. You owe me. Yet you act like this, making us feel ashamed, as though we had done something wrong. Well, you shouldn't have killed Absalom. He has no regret, no remorse, no care. He thinks he should be. You ever met people like that? They're so wrong and they think you owe them something rather than actually they owe you an apology and they think you owe them because they're right. You seem to this is kind of an interesting statement, and you can see why he thinks this. You seem to love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You know what he's really saying? Absalom didn't love you. Absalom and you were on odds. You didn't have this good relationship. And it says, you seem to love those who hate you. In other words, it's clear you love Absalom. Look at you. You love Absalom, but Absalom hated you. And you hate those who love you. In other words, Absalom was bad to you and you're weeping. I'm good to you and you don't care. You seem to love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You've made it clear today. This is the king he's talking to. You made it clear today that we mean nothing to you. That's not true. That's not true. His troops mean stuff. Joab means something to him. But so did his son. Deep down, so did his son. If Absalom had lived and all of us had died, you would be pleased. Now go out there and congratulate the troops. For I swear by the Lord that if you don't, not a single one of them will remain here tonight. Now, what's funny is, you know what step he didn't take? As crazy as he is and as loud as he is, you know what step he didn't take? What did he miss out on that? Who is he threatening to kill? All of them but who? Himself. Well, himself, but who else? Yeah. So there's a level of, he doesn't quite have the audacity to say, I'm going to kill you if you don't do it. What he says is, if you don't do it, I'm going to kill all of them. Think of the brashness and the pride in that.
Do you think David knows that Joab was the first to, throw the javelin at Absalom?
Well, I think it wouldn't take much to figure out that, Absalom's failed in his mission, right? And I don't think he says that straight when the people come back, right? I don't think it says how he died, but I don't think it would take much of a, he'd know pretty quick. Yeah. It doesn't tell you all it's said, but if Joab's the type that if he wanted Absalom alive, he would have come back alive probably. So that's a good question. Yeah. Not a single one of them will remain here tonight. So Joab's talking about loving people. He's like, I'm going to take them all out, because then you'll have nothing. See, David has these people, and he says, all of these people, the troops and all of that, none of them will be with you. I'll take all of your people if you don't. Now, there is a sense that David should get up and say thank you. There is a sense that David should be grateful for his people going out and defend. Look, and this group has defended him. When Absalom came, they chose David. So there should be some kind of respect and honor and thanks for that. He says, you will be worse off than you have ever been. He's like, if I kill all your troops, then what? Well, the fact is, if you do that, God still what? People try to threaten you to do things sometimes. I think David actually knows. I don't think that David just goes because Joab's threatening him, but I think David knows it's the right thing to do. A lot of these people were trying to do what the king wanted him to do. Remember that one wouldn't go near Absalom. He's like, I'm not touching him. The king told us not. So he's got some good men in there. The king, David, went out and sat at the city gate, and as the news spread throughout the city that he was there, everyone went to him. Here's the thing, right? What does he need in that moment? Think about this. It's the most precious thing you'll ever have in this lifetime. Think about, he's the king, right? He's sitting at the city gates. He's lost his son. He's lost his really young son with Bathsheba. All of this mess has happened. Tamar's been raped. Amnon's been killed. I mean, it's a mess. And the king is sitting there. What can the world or anybody offer him at this moment to make things better? Okay, so whether we're at a funeral or whether we can send cards, we can hug, we can give flowers, we can say nice things. You can do all kinds of stuff. But there's a level of that can't reach where you really need to reach. You can help, you can encourage, right? So there is some merit to that. I think you can be kind and gracious, and people have said things in a funeral that encourage people that, help. But deep down, what you need is to be really, really, really close with the Lord. Right? Because if you lose Absalom, but you see there's all kinds of tension even with the Lord, because the devil's all over David, right? Saying this is the accuser, like he's got some meat on David. And David is there, and it's this moment where this David is different than Psalm 23 David, isn't it? That's what he needs. He needs that kind of intimacy, when you read Psalm 23, how close do you get the picture that David and God are? And when you read this, what impression do you get? What I'm telling you is that no matter what happens in our lives, no matter what we face, if you are close to God, nothing else will matter. But when you're not close to him, everything will trigger you. And nothing will help. We talked about it, and I won't go into it, but we have this study, and we were talking about Joseph in prison. It's a famous story. He gets accused of rape. He's in prison. Can't be a great thing. But it says the Lord was with him. And so what you think is, get me out. But hold on. The Lord being with him, I don't think that just means he prospered him. And he did, because he made him friends with the warden, and he got in charge. And basically, he ran the prison, and nobody was touching Joseph. And Joseph had as good a time as you can in prison. But I think the inference is that him and God were really, really close. So even though you're in a prison for 2 years, the intimacy that he had with God overdid his circumstance. Let me try and relate it this way. In marriage, you've been close and not so close. Whatever level, I won't tell you I don't know what level that is, but sometimes you've been good and other times not so good. However far that difference is, you can figure that out. All right? So sometimes you're really, really close, right? Anyone really close at any point? Okay. And then there's other times where you're not so close. Well, we've been there, right? Where it's like every time you look at each other, you walk off, or you spit, or you shout, or you scream, and there's other times where it's like the honeymoon phase. Okay. When you and your husband or you and your wife are really, really close, and things, he's not saying anything stupid, she's got a shorter to-do list, whatever it is.
But you have an intimacy that can't be broken.
Yeah.
So I think that's what David or Joseph,
Yeah, there's an intimacy.
Intimacy with him and God.
100%. And David had a really strong intimacy, and then maybe not so. But what when you and your spouse are really close, the circumstances don't matter. I.e., if you're in a terrible house with no money, but you and her, or her and you are close, it's fine. If you're in a mansion and you're shouting and screaming, what I'm saying is circumstances don't dictate. Like, it's not buying a new car, getting a new job. It's, hold on, when I'm intimate with God, right, everything changes. I can be in a prison, I can be here. What David needs is to get that. Remember, he says, I don't let your spirit leave me. I need that. That's his cry after Bathsheba. Man, it's not everybody bowing to the king. It's not anybody. He needs God in a way that he knows God. And I think there is something that when you've been really close to God and now you're not as close, you miss it. Does that make sense? Like, people that have never been close to God, they don't miss that. They don't know what. But man, if you've been really close to God and then you're not, that hurts a bit. David needs a touch from God. He's sitting there. It's awful. My son, he just keeps weeping. Joab is trying to get him out. You know, when you want to curl up and die, the last place you want to be is out in public. I mean, David just wants to be left alone. And now, imagine on your worst day, someone putting you in front of the city and letting everyone come visit you. It's the last thing he wants to do. And it says, you see, when one person starts to lead people astray, the whole thing goes bad. Absalom had no right to the throne because God had ordained that it was David's. The scripture is clear. God puts in and God takes out. That's God. That's God's right. Now the Israelites have a massive problem. You see, once you get behind God, that's a good deal. You won't lose. Supporting God, following God, having God, that you won't lose in that. But when you go to the dark side, when you go to the other side, when you start supporting Absalom, when you vote for Absalom, you're voting against God. And now the Israelites, a lot of them are in trouble. Remember, only a few supported David comparatively. Why are they in trouble? Well, they done supported Absalom, and Absalom, that's a bit rough, right? You start a coup, and the guy that you're supporting, and the guy that you're behind, and the guy that you're trusting catches his hair on a branch and is dead. So it says, who went? Look, I ask you again, look what it says. The Israelites who supported Absalom had fled to their homes. Who is winning in this? Who is winning in it? Nobody. This is what happens when people do their own thing. When people fall in lust like David did, when families go astray, when everybody does what was right in their own eyes and messes it up, nobody wins. No country wins. Nobody wins. And the Israelites who supported Absalom fled to their home. What do you suppose they need? They don't need the favor of David. They need the favor of God. And how do they get that? They have to have, what do they really have? They have to repent and say what? We went against you. We went against your man. And there's that word. And how many of us will refuse to say that and it will cost us? Think about that. Think about that one word, sorry. How much intimacy has that robbed people of? In marriage, in relationship, I will not say that. I will not say that. And we've all been there. How much is not being, sometimes, I'm not going to say sorry until you say sorry first. Well, that doesn't work out very well. Yeah. And apparently when someone says sorry, you're meant to say sorry back. When Tasha says sorry, are you not going to apologize? Well, that doesn't work out very well. No, it does not. But sorry is a killer, right? And the Israelites are now at home and they're like, man, we done messed up. But the real lesson is you messed up not because you trusted Absalom, but you went away from God. And throughout the tribes of Israel, there was much discussion and what? Because everybody's gone in left field. And the people were saying, the king saved us from our enemy, the Philistines. David was a good king. He won the battle. In other words, God's right hand was what? Was with David. They beat the Philistines. But Absalom chased him out of the country. Yeah, Absalom chased him out of the country, but he had some help. And so remember, he took 200, though they didn't even know what he was doing. Absalom, whom we anointed to rule. Here it is. Here's your sin. Here's your sin. Here's the problem. Absalom, who we anointed to rule over us. There you go. There's their sin. Hold on. Who gets to anoint anybody? God does. We anointed, when you anoint yourself, it's going to end bad. God gets to anoint kings. God gets, even as the body of Christ, God gets to pick where we serve, what all that. You don't anoint yourself. You don't just wake up one morning. There was a guy at Liberty, woke up one morning, decided he was Jewish. Like all of a sudden. No, like really, he would only eat kosher food. He twirled his hair and had a hat. And but he's like never been Jewish before. It's like you can't just pick to be Jewish. It was really bad if you were behind him lining food because he had to ask all these questions. Like, I'll give it up. Just eat. But you see, the Lord anointed it. And we read it. Hold on. Who did the Lord anoint? Jesse's son. What was his name? David. Not Absalom. You can't just do what you want and expect God to. We anointed Absalom to rule all. How deluded do you have to be that Absalom's the right person? People will do it. And we anoint ourselves. And by the way, okay, so we think we're anointing kings now. We think our vote is, but God's over all of that. But do you see what they say? We let Absalom rule over us. So the question for all of us is, who do we let rule over us? Whether it's a boss, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a situation. Like, if money can rule over us, greed can rule over us, lust can rule over us. Like, that's the key. Like, one of the keys to Christian living is not to appoint or anoint anything to rule over us but the Spirit of God. Sometimes fear rules over us, lust, greed, you name it. There are many things that we anoint as king of our life, our career, our whatever you want to make it. And they made this savage mistake of, they admit it. Look at what they said. They admit it. We anointed to rule over us. And think of this. Absalom, the one we anointed to rule over us, is And look, they have to let's ask David to come back and be our king again. Kind of embarrassing, right? But David is smart enough, and David's king, and he'll let them back. But where did that get you? And King David sent Zadok and Abiathar the priest to say to the leaders of Judah, remember David's from Judah, that's his people. Why are you the last ones to reinstate the king? Israel has had this discussion like, hey, we anointed Absalom, Absalom's dead, I guess we need to go back to David. And there's those Benjamin and Judah, those two tribes, are still holding out. What's crazy is it always seems to be the ones that are closest to you, right? Remember what Jesus said, everyone will accept you apart from those in your own country. He's from Judah. And he says to the people from Judah, these people are coming with me. They've turned. But he says, I have heard that all Israel is ready and only you are holding out. In other words, why are you not coming back? And he says, you're my relatives, my own tribe, my own flesh and blood. Why are you the last ones to welcome me back? David has a nephew from his half-sister Abigail named Amasa. And here's this kind of ruthless side. Joab's been what? Joab's been David's right-hand man. And David decides, we're done here. Now the story's going to take an even bigger turn, and Joab's even more crazy. We might get into that next week. But look at what he says. He sweetens the pot. It's politics, right? If you want people to do something, you give them incentive to get behind it. Look at what he says. David spoke to his nephew, Amasa. Since you're my nephew, may God strike me dead if I don't appoint you as commander of my army in place of Joab. David is, to say the least, a little miffed at Joab. Why is he upset? Well, we killed his son, but also I'm king and you just completely what? Disobeyed my order, had no regret, don't have any clue. You can see why David. And so, again, David says, we're done here, Joab. I'm gonna give it to Amasa. Again, this is a problem with having a king. Amasa convinced all the leaders of Judah, and they responded unanimously. They sent word to the king, return to us, and bring back all those who are with you. It seems to work. He tells Amasa, you're my new man, you're the commander of the army. He goes back to the Judeans. He says, let's go. They unanimously were with David. Verse 15, look what it says. So the king started back to Jerusalem. Remember, he'd have to flee. And when he arrived at the Jordan River, the people of Judah came to Gilgal to meet him and escort him across the river. So he's going back home. And the people of Judah have decided to follow him. And by the way, God is doing all of that. It's not these deals that are... God is bringing all the people back to the king because that's what God wants. And so then Shimei, son of Gera, the man from Bahurim in Benjamin, hurried across with the men of Judah to welcome King David. You know, we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's crazy in of itself. But look at what it says. 1,000 men from the tribe of Benjamin were with him, including Ziba, the servant of Saul, and Ziba's 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed down to the Jordan to arrive ahead of the king. They all crossed the ford and worked hard, ferrying the king's household across the river, helping them in every way they could. Well, here's Ziba. Remember Ziba and Mephibosheth? Ziba, the one who is not to be trusted, he's there. He acts like he's a part of it. They have 1,000 people from the tribe of Benjamin, including Ziba, and it says the servant not of David, but the servant of who? Saul. And all his son, and here's all of these people, and they cross the ford. It just shows you again, you can only rely on one person. And then look what it says. Now, do you remember in 2 Samuel chapter 16, that guy called Shimei? Remember what it says? In 2 Samuel 16, verse 5. As David and his party passed Bahurim, a man came out of the village cursing them. It was Shimei, son of Gera, a member of Saul's family. He threw stones at the king and the king's officers and all the mighty warriors who surrounded them. Get out of here, you murderer, you scoundrel, he shouted at David. The Lord is paying you back for murdering Saul and his family. You stole his throne, and now the Lord has given it to your son Absalom. At last you will taste some of your own medicine, you murderer. And Abishai says, why should the dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head. And David said what? Don't do it. This is one of those amazing things. So Shimei has been throwing stones at you and insulting you, and he shows up to help you. But this is really interesting. So Abishai looks at Shimei and's like, he's a dead dog, just kill him. That's what he wanted to do, just kill him. And David's like, I'm not going to kill him. And remember, he says, maybe this is the Lord because of what I've done. And so David lets it go. And this is one of those moments again where if David had killed Shimei, would that have worked? Would that have been good? David, sometimes you have to you have to be self-controlled, and you just have to give it to the Lord, right? And when people do you wrong, what do you want them to do? You want them to come back and say what? There's that word again. Yeah, make it right. Say sorry. And Shimei, David doesn't have to do anything. David's response to him being yelled at and screamed at, look at what happens now. Shimei falls down before him. It's one thing when the king's on the run to come after him, but now when David's going to be king again, Shimei sees the writing on the wall. And he falls down at David's feet. And he says, my lord the king, please forgive me. Forget the terrible thing I did when you left Jerusalem. I know how much I sinned. That's why I've come here today, the very first person in all Israel to greet you. This is an amazing moment. I don't think this is just politics. I think he's genuine. Can you see where David is at? That what he needs is this touch from God. And don't you think that God in his own way is touching David through this? This is what I can do. I can give grace and I can give mercy. Shimei is now saying, look at what he says. When you left Jerusalem, I did a terrible thing. I know how much I sinned. That's why I have come here today. The very first person in Israel to greet you. You see, this is why we need God in all of these things. David needed God not to react in the wrong way when Shimei came. And Shimei needs God because without God, he'd never get to this place. He'd never get to this place of repentance. He'd never get to this place of, I was wrong. I did a wrong thing. And now, and this is just the devil, right? It's almost like this kumbaya kind of moment. Like, when we were kids, we used to do that on the playground, right? You'd fight, and then you'd high five and everything's over. Like, we should get back to that. Like, it was just forgotten, right? And Shimei and David are having this God moment because only God can do stuff like this. And Abishai speaks up again because that's what the devil does, right? Whenever something's going well, look at what he says. Shimei should die, for he cursed the Lord's anointed king. Here we go again. And you see, that's what the devil does. Do you see in 16, it was Abishai who said the first time, he's a dead dog what? How much grace and mercy and forgiveness is in Abishai's heart? Every time David is nice to people, he's like, kill him. But do you see why it's difficult to fight temptation? David did the right thing. And he gets rewarded royally when Shimei comes back and says, I'm the first one to greet you. I messed up. I sinned. And instead of saying, wow, thank you, God, Abishai perks up and says, he should die. Kill him. And now David got to again respond to that. And David looks at him and he says, what am I going to do with you sons of Zeruiah? That's his sister. This is not a day for execution, but for celebration. I am once again the king of Israel. And think about, this is an amazing moment. We were talking about this on Sunday a bit. Do you see the power that God gives to you to minister to people? Remember with Tabitha, she wakes up and Peter's there and the believers come in and the widows are there. It's like everybody's, remember we talked about Onesiphorus. He came to visit Paul in jail and it's like Paul becomes Jesus to him and Jesus to Onesiphorus through Paul. It's like they both realize that you're only doing this by the power of the Spirit of God. When Shimei comes back and says, I'm sorry and I have sinned, David is well aware that that's a move of the Spirit of God. You ever had someone do something for you and you know it's the Spirit of God? And so, and Shimei looks at David and realizes that the Spirit of God is in him or on him, and there's this amazing moment, and God is being glorified, and then there's this, look at what he says. Turning to Shimei with no vendetta. It's this amazing moment where David has lost all animosity, any animosity he would ever have, and he says, your life will be spared. Abishai kill him, and he turns to Shimei, he looks him in the eye, and he says, your life will be spared. David now is this gracious, wonderful, I told you, he's a bit like I mean, how do you describe David? What verse do you want to pick? One time he's an adulterer, the next he's this gracious, wonderful, amazing king. I mean, he's wild. But when Shimei goes home and says, my life is spared, what is the right perspective on that? Yeah. See, if you go home praising the king, you've missed it. The natural fleshly reaction of David to anyone that did to him that as a king is what? Kill him. But he didn't, because the Spirit of God was on him. What I'm telling you is, when God does amazing things through people, we have a tendency to go on about how nice they are, how good they are, what a great person they are. And, okay, but it's not them. Because let me tell you, without the Spirit of God, Shimei would be dead. And without the Spirit of God, Shimei could no more have said, I've sinned, than it's the Spirit of God that does those things. And we have to realize that when people are generous to us or nice to us, yes, they should be thanked for that. And yes, we should, there should be some kind of, appreciation. But you have to understand that that's Jesus. Like when Onesiphorus shows up at the Roman dungeon, that's not Onesiphorus. That's Jesus. That's the Spirit of God. And David is this amazing character. He's like, hey, your life will be spared. Remember Mephibosheth, the cripple, Saul's grandson, that was sat at the table, and he doesn't show up when David's leaving, remember? And Ziba says, Mephibosheth was trying to do you in. He didn't want anything. He's trying to steal all your stuff. This is amazing. So Ziba, remember Ziba has blamed Mephibosheth. Remember that? And I told you I didn't believe him. Look what happens. Mephibosheth, who, remember David says, is there anyone in Saul's family I can bless? And they're like, there's this guy Mephibosheth, his grandkid, he's crippled. And God says, David goes and says, you can have a seat at my table. And Ziba, remember this Ziba guy that we've just seen, 15 sons, 20 servants? He was to feed who? He was to work for Mephibosheth. You can kind of see that didn't go over. All right? Look at what it says. Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, arrived from Jerusalem to meet the king. He was so devastated by this loss. It's not probably doctor recommended, right? If you're missing someone, don't do this. He didn't wash his feet or clothes or trim his beard since the day the king left Jerusalem. He was so in mourning for David and for David has been really, 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 really good to Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth loves David. Mephibosheth adores David. David's on the run. David's had to leave, and old boy is devastated. And so he decides the reaction to that is not washing your feet, not trimming your beard, and not washing your clothes. All right? Well, let's not try that. Why? And look, when they meet, what does David, in listening to Ziba, do you remember what he did? He gave all the stuff to Ziba. Remember, he acts like Mephibosheth has sinned, and so David says, you can have all the stuff. Forget the deal I made, you have it all. It was rash, it was a mistake. And all David wants to know is, why didn't you come with me? Mephibosheth, the king asked him. Why didn't you come with? You can see the hurt, right? I've been so good to you, I helped you out, I've loved you, and you weren't there for me. But listen, there's many times that you need to, instead of just getting hurt, you need to ask more questions. You ever jumped in and gone nuts and then found out the story and like, okay. Like he assumes because and here's the thing, he's heard Ziba's side of the story. They say there's 3 sides, right? Your side, my side, and then the real truth. It's funny, like when you count, like I'm not trying to be funny, but if you counsel couples separately, like one, one then and one at another time, it's amazing. I mean, when you're sitting with a husband, you think the wife is the craziest, like it's her fault, like what is she doing? I'm with you, man. Like we're high-fiving, like you're my brother, like she's nuts. And then she comes in and you're like, huh. Maybe it's him. And by the end of it, you're like, Lord, I have no idea what's going on. because I thought she was nuts, but he's like, that's not what she's like. Oh, he didn't say that? No, he didn't say that. Oh, well, I had to, yeah. Mephibosheth, he asked him, Mephibosheth, why weren't you with me? You can see the hurt, right? Mephibosheth replied, my lord the king, my servant Ziba deceived me. I told him, saddle my donkey so that I can go with the king. For as you know, I am crippled. Ziba slandered me by saying that I refused to come. But I know that you are like an angel of God. So do what you think is best. He doesn't argue with him. He says this is what happened. And he tells David, I trust you. Do whatever you want to do. If you want to kill me, kill me. If you want to do whatever. I know who you are. I respect you. Ziba tricked you. He tricked me. I asked him to saddle up the donkey. He refused. He's told you a story. And by the way, he knows that when he shows up. This guy's kind of he shows up to welcome David knowing he's lied to his face, knowing he stole Mephibosheth's stuff. That guy's a piece of work. But look what happens. All my relatives and I could expect only death from you. He's so overwhelmed by God's, really, but David's goodness and grace. He says, all I could expect only death. I'm Saul's. I'm his grandkid. But instead you have honored me among those who eat at your own table. So how can I complain? This is absolutely amazing. Mephibosheth is so overwhelmed by the goodness and the grace that he's received. He's like, even if you kill me now, even if I lose everything, how could I ever say anything? You opened up your table to me. Well, listen, the inference of that is pretty clear, isn't it? Isn't that if exactly the way we're meant to be with the Lord? Hold on. If Mephibosheth says to David, do what you want with me, I trust you, how much more should we say that to the Lord? Mephibosheth says to David, I am so in awe of your righteousness and your grace and your mercy and your provision and your love for me that look at what he says, I can only expect death. In other words, if you believe this story and you believe I betrayed you, maybe I die. He doesn't even really try and defend his case. He states what happened. And then he says, but instead, you honored me. I'm allowed to eat your own table. And he says, so how can I what? Man, what would happen? Just try it for a week. We'll return to this next week. How many times do you think you complain? Okay, so think about this. You have honored me among those who eat at your own table. You honored me by dying for me. How can I complain? Think about that. I mean, when we complain, we're really, if God's orchestrating it and God's over it, when we complain, we're really complaining about. So think about how powerful that is. God, no matter what happens to me. I mean, okay, when Jesus dies for you at the cross, what can overcome that? Like, what can be better than that? Like, no matter what Jesus does to you next, do you see? If Jesus died for us on the cross, and obviously he did, right? If Jesus gave his life for us, then if we lose people in our life, if we lose money, nothing compares to that. So if you died for me on the cross, no matter what I go through, Job-like experiences, anything, how could I complain in the light of your grace and your mercy and your love? If David loved Mephibosheth, how much more does God love us? To send us his son. And that's the key, right? God, you're over all of this. You're doing it. How could I complain? Imagine it'd be pretty brash for Jesus to walk in and say, oh, man, it's good to see you. I have one complaint. I mean, honestly, what would you do if someone put up their hand and said, I have a complaint, Jesus? I mean, I'd run, I think, instead, or I'd probably actually stay just to see what happened, but I might take cover. I mean, that would be, who would say, yeah, me too? These people are like, well, I'm going to ask him that when you get to heaven. No, you're not. No, you're not. There's not going to be I'm going to barrage you with questions. Why did you do that? No, you'll be perfect. You won't do any of that nonsense. But imagine that. Imagine if we could be so in awe of God's goodness and grace. Mephibosheth was basically like, I'm good. You've been so good to me. Do what you want with me. I'm not going to complain. And David says, my decision is that you and Ziba will divide your land equally between you. Well, he started off, Mephibosheth had it. Then Ziba tells him a lie. He says, Ziba, you have it. And now he doesn't, he's caught in no man's land. He's already given the land to Ziba. And so he's like, well, here's the deal. Just half it. And here comes, this is why look at what Mephibosheth says. Look at what he says. What does he say? How awesome is that? I don't want it. I don't need it. He's so blessed and so in that. David has offered him half the land. He's like, you know what? I don't need it. Look at what he says. I'm content just to have you back. All I need is you. I just want you here. Keep the land, keep all the stuff. I don't care. I just want you here. Sounds like what would happen if someone did that for you? What would happen if someone gave up a bunch of stuff and said, the only thing I want is to be next to you? You might marry someone like that, huh? Don't you see again the correlation is that's exactly like Mephibosheth was willing to give up everything, anything, just to be around the king. Guess what that's an inference to? Lord, if you don't give me money, if you don't give me my stuff, if they rip me off, if I lose this, all I want, again, is to be close to you. Because being close to you, listen, being close to Jesus is way more valuable than anything the world can offer you. You're better off being close to Jesus in no house, with no money, with no health, than you are with all of it and not. Mephibosheth is this picture. I'm content just to have you. Maybe those are the last two, and I'll finish. Those are the last two things we can remember from this. I have no complaints. I'm content just to have you. Try that for a week. We should play a game. When you complain for the first time, text me. We'll see who lasts the longest. I have no complaints. I just want to be around you. That's powerful stuff. How many times do we intrinsically complain to the Lord? And it's like, you know what? Even if he doesn't give you what you want, he's given him you. He's given you him. I have no complaints. I just want to be around you. Does anyone have any questions?